Lance with the National Weather Service here in the Houston Galveston office, and we're going to talk about this tropical disturbance that we kind of been watching since late yesterday. It's named 91L. That's the NVEST that the National Hurricane Center is using to denote this particular system. We've been watching this both with radar reflectivity and visible satellite imagery, and it's pretty easy to see actually. In our satellite imagery, it looks kind of like a little swirl out there with low-level cloudiness, but not really. You can see there's not really any thunderstorm activity near the center. There are some showers and possibly a thunderstorm just a little bit off to the east. So even though when you see the kind of the swirling nature of the low clouds, it definitely has the low-level center now. It's not what we would consider really all that well organized, since it doesn't have a lot of thunderstorm activity near the center. And we can also see it off the Texas coast by radar imagery. It's kind of at the very bottom right of the radar image from the Brownsville radar is basically what we're using to see that. And you can see there's really no, again, no showers and thunderstorms right at the center. But all along, all to the west and even to the north and east, if we had a bigger radar picture, there is some shower and thunderstorm activity, and some of that's associated with the mid to upper level feature. So this kind of started in the mid layers, and then yesterday started to look like, okay, maybe something's trying to start getting it going in the lower part of the atmosphere. And when you look at surface observations out there, the winds are generally in the 20 to 25 knot range. So not strong by any means wind-wise at this time. I know you're all familiar with the tropical weather outlook that the National Hurricane Center produces. This is the 2-day tropical weather outlook, and it's right now, we started with a 20% chance of development yesterday evening, and right now it's about a 40% chance of development. And again, you can see the location there with this is actually a different kind of satellite imagery, but you can still see the satellite imagery with a shower and thunderstorm kind of around the feature, but not necessarily at the center. Long story short, it's not that well organized, but it's still possible a short-lived tropical depression or even a weak storm could form as the disturbance moves inland. It's going to move across the northwestern Gulf Coast and then inland to probably late tonight somewhere along the Texas coast. When we look at the area of possible development, you kind of see where the center is right now, but it's always possible in these weak systems that the center actually reforms under some convection if it were to try to get better organized. So it can jump around a little bit on you if it were to get better organized. So that's why we have this hatched area kind of all across the northwest Gulf Coast and even right up to the Texas coast. So it's possible, you could get a tropical depression form, right as it's coming inland. That's not out of the question later tonight. So that's what we'll continue to watch it. If you look at what some of our models are showing, it's basically they're showing a track of that low-level center kind of right down the middle of this hatched area. So most likely the center would be somewhere around the middle Texas coast. But the center's not all that important because really it's the rainfall that's going to be the primary issue with this particular system, and that's going to be pretty spread out, as I'll show you as we move on. So yeah, we already had that big heavy rainfall event earlier this week, and it was last weekend. We're not expecting that kind of rainfall. Like I said, we're kind of seeing disorganized showers and thunderstorms, but nonetheless, there's deep tropical moisture, continue to be transported northward back from the Gulf of Mexico into southeast Texas and also into southwest Louisiana. So we do expect up to 2 inches could occur later today and tonight. You can see across our eastern areas, sort of Liberty, Polk, Chambers, maybe even eastern Harris. That area is probably the area that would see the heaviest rainfall when we look at the trajectory right now of how showers and thunderstorms may be coming inland later today and tonight. And then as we move into Saturday and Saturday night, probably less rainfall than what we see later today and tonight. And the pattern gets shifted a little bit to the west as the disturbance has likely moved inland. So a little bit lighter rainfall is the expectation now for Saturday and Saturday night, maybe a half to 1 inch. And these are aerial averages. As always, you can always get a little bit more than that in localized amount. So we'll be looking out for that too. So the excessive rainfall outlook. So where could we see the better flood potential? And we're pretty saturated, so it doesn't take a lot of rainfall to cause us a problem. Right now, it looks like that the best chance for any kind of you call it flash flooding, but it kind of looks like for our area anyway, kind of on the low end of flash flooding. But it would be the eastern areas, as I just highlighted, where the heavier rainfall is expected. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't have some street flooding, ponding, and some urban areas with this type of event, should we get 2 or 3 inches in some localized areas. And then a little bit, like I said, a little bit less of a flash flood threat as we move into Saturday and Saturday night, just the marginal risk instead of the slight risk that we're seeing now over eastern areas. Severe weather outlook, not expecting much severe weather. That's the good news. You can't rule out an isolated tornado in a rain band or any organized convection that might get going overnight. So that threat looks greatest across eastern areas, but this is a pretty low threat. It's just a marginal risk. And if we did see a tornado, it would likely be on the very, very low end, not any kind of high end intensity tornado. And then on Saturday night, the expectation right now is that we are not going to see any severe weather. So if a tropical storm were to form tonight, it's possible that we would have another marginal risk added for portions of the area. But for right now, we're not having that expectation. Brian Kyle, our Marine Focal Point, put this slide together. Really nice slide to kind of summarize what's happening, especially over the water right now. So we will see some building seas today and Saturday. Some winds will be increasing. Definitely looks to be small craft advisory type event. And we could see some seas well offshore, 6 to 8 feet. We'll talk a little bit about tide levels on the next couple of slides. And of course, with strong easterly winds, we could definitely expecting some rip currents there along the coast near jetties and piers. So we showed this earlier this week that we've had these elevated tides about 1 to 2 feet above normal. It's possible they'll creep up a little bit more than that, maybe 2.5 feet above normal. That kind of looks to be our kind of high end potential. So it's not out of the question we could touch 4 feet at high tide, kind of in the early morning hours or maybe towards midnight tonight, and then probably come down a little bit as we get into Saturday, especially late Saturday. And Freeport down there has kind of the same pattern as Galveston. So just to show you that our problems would only really occur at high tide, and it would be monitored. We are monitoring for potential coastal flood advisory should we think we need that. So some takeaways here. Could see a brief depression or storm form later today or tonight. The main impact, though, regardless of that, is going to be rainfall, and it doesn't look like the kind of rainfall we saw earlier this week. However, we could see some street flooding where locally heavy rainfall amounts occur, and that's mainly because our ground is so saturated. Can't rule out a brief isolated tornado and any rain band that forms and moves over the area, and that threat right now looks a little bit greater on the eastern portions of our area than western portions. And we know our tide levels are continue to stay elevated. We may see some minor coastal flooding at high tide tonight and or kind of Saturday morning. That looks like the period of concern. Okay, with that, I'm going to unmute everybody here and see if we have